and welcome back to Unpopular People.
We believe that listening and learning from each other is key for personal development and success.
Today in our interview, Annie.
Before we start, we acknowledge the Yungabe people as the custodians and traditional owner of the land we are on.
Annie is an Indigenous Wiradjuri woman from inland New South Wales.
She's currently studying peer support as an ex-addict and is working as a mental health worker.
Stay tuned to learn a lot about nature and the Indigenous culture, because listening and learning from each other is key for personal development and success.
If you want to find out more about Unpopular People, please visit our website www.unpopularpeople.com and sign up for our newsletter.
And now enjoy this amazing interview with Annie. Hello Annie, wonderful to have you today here in our apartment doing a little interview with you. So our first question we always ask our interview guests, where were you born and how did you grow up?
I was born in Sydney, New South Wales, and I grew up on the Central Coast. So the best way to describe that is it would be the city that is in between Sydney and Newcastle. So the city there.
So tell us a bit about your upbringing. What did your parents do for work, and do you have any siblings?
My mum was a stay-at-home mum, but she wasn't home. And I have an older brother. He's 7 years older than myself. We're not very close at all. And my dad I am close with, and he was an electrician, so he was the first person in our family to get a formal trade, and he worked with the Sydney Electricity for a long time.
And what is your earliest childhood memory? Tell us a little bit about your childhood, what you remember from back then.
I was very lucky to be raised in nature, so we spent all day outside. We were called in, there was bush behind us, and that was like a big playground. It backed onto a big body of water, so my childhood was spent in the bush playing, which was like a wonderful way to grow up. We had a pine tree forest down there as well, an old well, a sandstone house. There was a spring with turtles in it. It was beautiful. Big ant nests, big bull ant nests, and it was like a childhood initiation where you had to dance on, like if you were being punished by the neighbourhood kids, or you had to prove yourself that you weren't going to dob someone in, you'd have to dance on the ant's nest, so they'd all come up your legs. So I don't know why I told you that. But yeah, that was that. I just kept seeing it, like, the kids standing around. So I can remember getting a belting, and I remember the phone call, and my mum hung up the phone. She's like, "Did you make Tracy Stoko dance on the bull ant's nest?" Yes, I did.
We're not from Australia originally, as our audience knows. But so did your parents just let you play in the bush, or were they sometimes afraid that you get, because we're in Australia, like because of snakes and spiders and stuff like this?
No, I guess my dad, being a Wiradjuri man, it was just a natural thing to. We didn't really have a fence, so you just go out the backyard and then down a little hill and then you're in the bush. So no, unfortunately I grew up with a lot of dysfunction in my family household, so actually the bush was a safer place for me to be a lot of times than in the home. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about dysfunction at your home?
Sure, sure. I came 7 years after my brother. I think I was a surprise, or not planned at least. And by that time, I don't want to play lounge room psychiatrist or psychologist. I don't kind of like that trend going on, especially in social media where people seem to be diagnosing each other. All of that, I'm going to say the word wrong myself, all of that narcissist, all that stuff. But she was an unwell lady, and I'm sure it was from her own unresolved childhood trauma. So she couldn't maintain friendships. She didn't like my dad to have friends, like she was one of those people that like to isolate, because she kind of fought with everybody all of the time. Children really didn't they'd come and get me to play, but they wouldn't necessarily play at my house. And she would, to be honest, she was always quite happy for me to be out the door. So, and then my older brother, I think she had already broken him by the time I was born. So he's quite unwell, and my dad's a beautiful man, but he has, I guess, all of his own trauma as well. So he tended to enable my mum's behaviour, and him being an adult, he had easier ways to be out of the house for long, extended periods of time, whether he was working 2 jobs or he was a very talented football player. So in his older age, he was the president of a local football club. So that got him out of the house. So yeah, I guess the bush a lot was a safe place for me. And then culturally, I think there's something to be said for cultural knowledge or cultural knowing. It wasn't till I got older that I realised how much I was being taken care of by the bush. Sounds crazy, but so it was a safe place. It was a magic place, like for all of the badness in my childhood, there's, beauty and love still. I was very close to my grandfather, who was his mother, according to Australia, doesn't exist. So basically my family goes back 2 generations. Yeah, it's crazy, hey? So my dad exists. My grandfather got a birth certificate when he was 34, and that was when he agreed to go to the Second World War, was when the government issued him with his first birth certificate. Okay. So there's no records back from my grandfather. So basically our family line starts in 1939 or 1940, something like that.
Yeah, that is. I mean, it's a really weird time of this continent over here, and I mean, it's everywhere in the world. You have those horrible things happened in the past, which is very unfortunate. But I think we also learn a lot, from our history, and I think that's why we're here for as well. So I was wondering, which years did you go to school, like primary school, and how was it for you going to primary school as an Indigenous girl?
So I turn 50 next October. So I was started primary school in the end of the 70s, and I was actually at high school in 1988, which was the 200-year anniversary of colonisation, and of course the government put on a big thing, and we all had to go up and receive like these memorial medals, and that was like kind of difficult. The blessing, I have fairer skin, which is a lot to do with why the government got onto taking the children. They worked out that a melanin leaves our skin within 3 generations. So, which is why they were so ferocious with the assimilation policies. I was thinking about things today, and I was thinking, well, I was born in 1972, and it wasn't until 1967 that we were actually recognised in the referendums. So any referendums prior to that, the Indigenous population wasn't included in it. I guess there's a blessing and a curse to having milky skin, and the blessing is that I can walk into very different worlds and pretty much like go undercover. So I've certainly been in situations in Australia where I have not disclosed my heritage. And then I guess another blessing is that I can speak, I think I speak a little bit fearless, because I know people were seeing me. I think the melanin sometimes stifles white Australia. They would say things to me that maybe they wouldn't say to people with darker skin. And then it's also good because you can actually know somebody's truth beforehand. I've been in a couple of situations at work where employees found out, after a long time, and it's like, well, brother, I don't know your heritage either, so why is this a requirement that I should disclose my heritage? I'm not asking where your bloodlines are from, and that usually comes from people who have said stuff that obviously they wish that I had never heard. Australia, it's sad to say, is a very racist country, and touching on what you said before with everybody's past, I think that until Australia starts with their truth-telling, we can't heal, and there can't be any kind of reconciliation. I think that belief in Australia that we're a non-racist country is scary. It's a really scary, living in Southport and seeing how, white Australia was saying terrible things to Asians in the street. Where does that come from? I worked as a nurse before, and I was very privileged to work one evening in recovery while a actual a retrieval for organs were taking place. And if people can't understand it through the fact that you can take a kidney out of a gay African-American man and put it into an Asian 7-year-old girl and it be a match and work, should make people understand. You never hear a white supremacist say, I only want a white guard dog, do you? They all want the big black scary ones because they understand that it's only fur. Well, our skin is fur. It's our fur. It's only skin deep. I don't get it. It's 2021.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a time where we talk about skin color like we talk about hair color.
Yes, exactly right. The fur, you hear them when they talk about picking their designer dog, and they're always so big. Oh, I want the champagne color. It's fur. It's fur.
Yeah, this is it's a really strange topic, especially in a country where so many different cultures and races and like so many different people from all over the world. Like I don't know, like a bigger diversity than in Australia and in any other place, and it's still we have sometimes unfortunately similar experience. But there's this is one thing. There's a lot of nice people as well. Yeah. There are many good people here. There's a lot of nature, and as you said before, there's a lot of bush where you enjoyed your time. So how do you find out, or how do you learn about your surrounding if you live in a suburban area?
So we call it connecting with country, and connecting with country when you're in a urban setting can mean, obviously means different to being on country. And for myself, how do I connect with country? Well, obviously I walk barefoot a lot on it. My flatmate teases me and says it's a new thing, it's called grounding. I don't know if your mob know about it, but, it's a new thing. All the hippies are doing it. Yeah. I also fire stick farm in my own block, like my own yard. So I keep all of the branches and stuff like that for our own fires, and for any mob who's having a fire can come pick it up, which was something that was traditionally done all over the country. There's actually 500 nations here, so I kind of can only speak on my own, and even that is probably somewhat limited. But fire stick farming was integral to our country. You maybe have been here when there's been fires. So yeah, in the old ways, 10% of Australia was burnt every winter, for want of a word. It's where all of the nations worked together. It was called a cool burn. So it was burnt in the time of the year where everything's still cold and a little bit wet. So you'd put the fire through. So the fire was also done in a circle, obviously, so it would burn itself out. And also lining up in a circle gives all of the wildlife enough time to get out, as opposed to in a straight line. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to escape when they backburn in a straight line. And the reason that they did it during that time was for the cool burn. And what that did was left charcoal on top of the land instead of ash, which 3 or 4 years' time, when that same area would be burnt, you'd have like 4 years of carbon to go back into the soil. It was like, you see when you walk in the bush now, you see all of the soil and then the sand. It used to be like parks, if you could imagine like a parkland, and then you imagine everybody. Fire sticks were important. You needed fire sticks. They were a commodity, and they were, so the fact there was no tinder, so there was no wild bushfires, so I fire stick farm on my own land. I have water out for the natives. I share a block of land with a blue-tongued lizard and 3 possums and 100 birds from about 10 different varieties. So it's an old block of land, so after every rain I go right over the property for microplastic. I walk my local neighbourhood, so that's exploring, go. There's no rule that says you have to stand on the path. In fact, I recommend walking beside the path. It's not good for you to walk on cement. Shoe or not shoe, it's no good. And country will give its secrets up. I think the best way we can help at a personal level is the microplastics. If you can make a commitment, if you're running at the spit a few times a week, you can make a commitment of 70 pieces have to be removed within that week for you to pay homage. There's lots of things that you can do that don't cost you money. And like I say, the ancestors watch you. And this is a beautiful country to live on. I guess I see it differently. We're raised different, like on Wiradjuri country, landmarks and that, streams and rivers and mountains, they're like, you know, referred to as cousins and aunties and uncles. So they're loved on like a family member. And same with like the animals. Like I know in my street, in the last 3 months, 3 old houses have been demolished, which actually meant 17 trees and bushes. And we've like, you know, got a lot of birds in the area and they're already doing it tough. And, you know, people just, they don't replant, they don't. And they're our equals. I think that's probably the biggest flaw, is that we don't have any more right to be here than any other thing. We're all equal, you know, like you don't take out a neighbourhood magpie because it is bombing you during breeding season, you know. It's up to the community to be friends with the magpie for the other 10 months of the year, than be the enemy of the magpie for 2 months during breeding season. Or worse yet, you know, have council poison them or take them out, shoot them, you know. They got every right to be here.
Maybe, Elisa, you can tell us how to become friends with the magpie, because Annie told us we had dinner here before, and Annie and Elisa were talking about the magpies, and Elisa was wondering how she can become friends with them. So tell us.
Yeah, so a few weeks ago, I was on my push bike, riding the push bike through a park, and suddenly I saw a shadow about my head, and a magpie was flying around me and tried to attack me. And because I have no idea about this kind of birds and how to communicate with them, the only reaction I had was getting a straight out of the situation and pedal as fast as I can to refuse of that magpie. Yeah, so Annie told me there's a way of communicating with these birds, and yeah, as I learned so far from her, you have to look into their eyes and make a special sound, and they will remember you for life when they know you take your time to communicate with them and to explain to them. But maybe, Annie, you can explain better how is the sound you have to make, and if I said it correctly.
That was beautiful. So the whistle is really simple. It's just this. It's just mimicking the mother or the father who's feeding a juvenile bird, and the bird knows that it's a safe whistle and that someone's got food for them. So it's a reward whistle that all of magpies will recognise. They're very smart and they remember faces. Some scientists has come up with the statistic somewhere that they actually remember 30 human faces at one time, but they will never forget a kind face and they will never forget a mean face. So I wouldn't turn around and throw a rock at them because they will remember. But certainly trying to, if you can get eye contact with them, don't be frightened, look them right in the eyes, and they're pretty much just taking a photo of your face and going, you're all right. I'm not going to get you next year. I do think that Elise is an honorary Australian now that she's been bombed by a magpie, though.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Let's come back to your story. I was wondering, so after school, you also already mentioned you were a registered nurse, and so what's the process between going to school and becoming a nurse, and why are you not doing this anymore?
So I've finished high school, so I was the first person out of my family to finish high school, and then I got a scholarship and went to university and did 3 years of nursing school. And then I worked for 17 years as a nurse. The last 7 years of that was as a functioning opiate addict. I worked in palliative care, not for the drugs. I didn't take anything from work, but I worked in palliative care for probably 10 years. And to be honest, I feel like I paid my to society, like I've done my good turn. I'm obviously burnt out and obviously unwell, and I was a single mother as well, so it was pretty crazy times. My mum kind of pushed me into being a nurse. I was too frightened not to do what she said. So it was also a very big fall from grace, I guess, like going from the first person to complete a university degree to being an opiate addict was a big fall from grace. And shame and guilt is very much unfortunately, a negative part of culture. So that was like pretty phenomenal, but I'm here.
And may I ask, how did it start that you got into this addiction with the opium?
I used as a teenager as well. I was really close to my grandfather. He was like probably the light of my life growing up. And when he passed over, it was like I didn't have any reason to be, like I would only try to be good for him. So when he passed over, I kind of didn't have any reason. And then heroin takes your pain away. And it made me feel normal. It made me feel like I could hold my head up, and I could certainly take my mum's unwellness a lot better when I was numbed on opiates. I'm 8 years clean. A part of my wellness was deciding to go no contact with my mum. Unfortunately, a outcome of that also means I'm in no contact with my dad. As heartbreaking as that is, I still, sometimes you got to love people from a distance, and it's all good to talk about forgiving. And even if I do get to the point where I can forgive, I'm too busy working on forgiving myself first. If they still exhibit toxic behaviours, I think you can have the capacity to forgive, but you still don't have to enter back into a toxic relationship. And I will pick no contact in the life that I have today, any day, even from like the sadness of that decision.
So when you said you used heroin, were you always shooting up, or were you also snoring or smoking it, or what was your consumption?
The first time I tried heroin, it was injected into me, and I think I've only smoked it once. So yeah, I used needles the whole time. Shame job.
And who was the person that gave it to you for the first time?
One of my older brother's friends, Predator, saw the opportunity. And my brother was pretty rough with me, so I don't know whether he thought he was doing the right or wrong thing. Yeah.
Okay, and so what made you stop? So what made you stop at some point?
So when I talk about the fall of grace, I was living in Byron Bay. I'd lived in and out of that area for about 20 years. And I was homeless, and I was living basically in a swamp. So in the... and I used to have to walk past my old employment through the bush so I could see the back of where I used to work as a registered nurse, and it was like the complete fall of grace, you know, like, wow, 10 years ago I was the only registered nurse employed there and I managed 60 residents' care plans, you know, and there I was 10 years later sneaking past the fence hoping nobody saw me while I snuck into my tent in the bush.
Can you describe, or if you want, describe the feelings of this situation you felt in this moment?
I think when people ask about, like, were you ever suicidal? I was never suicidal, but I had that constant thought with me, like, what is the point? Like, what is the point of this? What is the point of me? You know, like, my parents were actually living in Byron, well, they still do. So I would know what they were doing at different times of the day, and because I was unwell and I missed my dad, like, I would follow him to the beach and I'd be 30 metres behind him and he wouldn't know that I was watching him. I'd go to my kids' school and watch them in the playground, but couldn't approach anyone. My daughter was turning 18. There was a lot of little things that led up to it. My daughter was turning 18 and I kept having this thought going through my head that you don't want to be a heroin addict for her 18th birthday. You can't give her that legacy. Kept going through my mind. Lucky for me, at the time I was using the opiate tablets as well, which of course I was cooking up and shooting up. And they changed the chemical makeup of the opiates, so they turned to jelly, so you couldn't inject it anymore. And then I had an incident with a case manager of mine, like an employment case manager, and I think I was going through that, what's the point, I'm so, you know, why am I here, and feeling like I was nobody and nothing, and this just man out of randomly just kind of grabbed me by the shoulder and was like, I just don't want to stand over your grave, thinking, what a waste. And that was the first time in a long time I realised that a human that wasn't unwell on the drugs, that I mattered. So sort of all of those things coming together. I wasn't interested in opiates if I couldn't inject it. I think it was a self-harming kind of thing for me as well, maybe. So all of those things came together, and I detoxed in the bush, which I wouldn't recommend to anybody. And I came out of the bush, and then I dabbled a little bit with ice for a while because I was still had that needle fixation. But of course it wasn't giving me what I wanted so that only lasted about 6 weeks. And then it was a really slow walk back to community. My teeth were terrible, you know, like I had terrible teeth. I've had a lot of work done. I spent all of my super on them. And then all of that shame, like, you know, wow, I was, esteemed, you know, held with esteem in the community. And, you know, where I worked and where I lived for a while was two different communities, and the community that I lived in had a high First Nation population, and they were actually like sending their family 40 minutes away to be where I was working because I was there, you know. So I did have, like, you know, a lot of respect in a sense, you know, only because of my qualifications, maybe not so much on me personally, but
I can't imagine how to really get out of that and how to change what was it, and how did you start to go back to community? Where did you go first? Was it you or someone else who took you to a safe place?
So I went from the bush to camping in a caravan park, and I guess now, like, looking back on my, like, I'm just going 8 years clean. Looking back on it, it was a spiritual journey that I didn't know I was on. Like, now I can look back on it and go, oh. So for a couple of years, I kept trying to still take the easy way out and let people save me, or, you know, like I would stay, you know, like go from one relationship to the other kind of thing. And then I finally ended up in a situation where I knew I had to save myself. So this happened 3 years ago, and I left where I was and arrived at Tweed Heads with my telephone, one bag on my back and a black eye. And 3 years later, I have my own place with my lease. I haven't had a lease in 12 years. I have a car. I have finishing off my second year of formal education. I have the best friends and support network that I have in my whole entire life. And I felt like maybe if I had done it all myself right from the beginning, that maybe my recovery would have, or getting me to where I am today, may have been a bit quicker. Who knows? But yeah, pretty much doing everything opposite to how I would normally be. It's funny, as like with relationships, somebody asked me the other day, and I'm like, it'd have to be exceptional. You know, like, to give up what I've got now, the fella would have to add to me and be, you know, it's the first time I've been in a relationship with myself. I drew on the basics of my culture and what I knew. We kind of say this thing like a tribal voice, and I only started to hear my tribal voice a couple of years ago, and since then my life just gets better every day. In the sense of, like, I live simply but with so much joy. And
we're taking a quick break and be right back into the show.
Annie shows us the importance of communities. We have a community too.
To join us, please visit our website www.unpopularpeople.com and sign up for our community.
And now back to the show.
Okay, so you told us that you've done the detox yourself, which must have been a very, very difficult time. And also you said that you've been clean for the last 7 years. What does clean mean to you? Is it abstinent of everything, or what does it mean?
I feel like recovery, it's the wrong word. Like, I was an opiate addict, and I used opiates to medicate myself for unresolved childhood trauma, and then trauma that is associated with obviously being a dysfunctional addict as an adult. So I did the work, you know, or a psychologist and I did the work. And you know, it's hard work. But when it comes to opiates, I say that I'm healed. I have no desire for opiates. I don't crave them. I don't dream about using, which is something a lot of addicts have to deal with. I have a drink whenever I want to have a drink, which is probably about, I'm a cheap drunk, so I'm not a big drinker, so 2 cans of bourbon is normally enough for me to be silly. I like my Yandi, but I have to be meeting all of my personal agreements with myself for me to have a smoke on a Friday. So Yandi is cannabis. Yeah. So if I do all my assignments, I go to work, I meet all of my obligations, then I'll normally have a smoke on a Friday night. But if I haven't, like if I don't think that I've earned it, because for me, I think it is a cultural thing in both First Nation Australia and general Australians, is the celebration of Friday, the celebration of ending the week. So if I, but yeah, I don't have any cravings for opiates at all. I don't know how, I wouldn't like anyone using opiates in my house, but what they do on their own time is no business of mine. I'm a big believer in the decriminalisation of all drugs. I think I think it's a personal choice, and I think if as adults that we should be able to choose our recreation. I'm a bit like, as long as it doesn't involve animals or children, I don't really care what you're doing, and as long as it's consenting adults, whatever you do is your business. I was very lucky. I was using a lot of different drugs at the end of my using stage, but luckily for me, and I was very blessed that I didn't have multiple addictions. So, I was lucky. I kind of I would rather promote the use of cannabis as a relaxant, especially for my people. Alcohol and ice is destroying our communities. But in saying that, I don't think that abstinence is not for everyone, and it is whatever works. I think, in someone's own recovery journey, whatever works. Try anything, try everything, I don't think it's good to close your mind off to anything. I'm really excited, like what we were speaking about before. I'm excited to see where microdosing with psychedelic mushrooms will go in the future. I'm pretty pro-choice on everything.
And do you have an advice for people that want to get out of an addiction, to build this good relationship with a certain drug? How you say you have it as a treat when you've done your work. How can you reach that?
It's the discipline and self-respect and being honourable to your word. If you say that, then and I don't want to be controlled by anything. I've been there, and it's not a place. I think I would say to somebody, the best thing you can bring to recovery is you and your, like what works for other people may work for you, may not. The biggest thing I think with any kind of wellness is taking the like you have to be accountable to do the work as well, and a lot of it with healing, it's not pretty, it's ugly and it's hard, and it's not about rainbows and my life's great because I'm clean or I'm not addicted to opiates. I think you got to be brave, and I call it shadow work. You got to look at your own flaws. It's confronting, realising you were the toxic person, but we're all flawed, we've all got the capabilities to be toxic. We've all made mistakes. We all do things in the moment that isn't a normal reaction. That's humanity, and that's okay. I think blaming takes too big a chunk of everybody's time. Who's to blame? Doesn't matter who's to blame. Blame doesn't change anything. And after blame, the next question has always got to be, what now? You know? And unless you're prepared to say what now, you know, like there was 1,000 times I was to blame. There was 1,000,000 times I was the toxic person, you know? You have to be willing to do your shadow work. You got to look at your own stuff, and you have to be accountable for your own healing. You can't expect, it doesn't just miraculously happen without hard work, you know, and it's lonely sometimes and boring sometimes, you know, but I think it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth it, and I think it's all right to be flawed. You know, it's okay to make mistakes. I think as a society, we have to remember that. This counselling culture, it's frightened me a little bit. Like, you know, we're human. We all do dumb things, and, you know, the person I was 10 years ago, you certainly wouldn't have had over for a meal, you know?
And do you have or have any tools that helped you to process healing?
Yeah, this is where I started to draw on my culture. So we have it's like a way of life, a way of living is Yindamara. It's all about going slowly and carefully. And I recommend that to anyone on any kind of healing journey, whether it be from addiction, mental health, trauma, whatever. You go slow and carefully. Be friends with yourself. It's hard to be friends or kind to yourself. So within Yindamara, so everything is slow and careful. So every decision I make, you know, is made slowly and carefully. Anything I attempt, whether it be creatively or my assessment, it's done slowly and carefully. At the same time, it's about honour and respect and sharing, being kind. We talk a lot about lateral love, and that's about like your love over everything, and that's getting back to your shadow work, and that's loving the flaws in yourself, loving the flaws in other people. You know, the family members that are hard work, you love on them harder, you know, like, because it's normally, the way I see it is when I'm having a problem with someone, 9 times out of 10, it's not me, my intuition, it's my own stuff, you know, like, so normally you know, you work hard on what is hard. I live by the words love anyway. So when you're broken, you do have a choice. You have a choice to love anyway, whether it be on yourself or the world around you, you know. If you're in a depressive state, you still have a choice. You can love anyway. You know, if you're in active addiction, you can still love, you know, especially when it's hard.
And how can you learn to love yourself?
By going slow and carefully and being kind with yourself. Marunbang is a word that we don't differentiate between love and kindness. So to be kind is to love, and to love is to be kind. And more importantly, that on practicing it on yourself, being kind to yourself, which is saying things like, yep, you made a mistake. Well, we won't be doing that again. It's all right. You know, this is how we learn. I don't think we're kind enough to ourselves, and I don't think we're proper kind to each other. Another big part of Yindamara is your manners and your politeness, and I think it's sad that we save all of our politeness and our manners either for the police or the rich. We should be using it on each other. We should be calling each other ma'am and sir all day, every day, you know. I think manners is really super important, especially it was good for my, like learning how to heal from all of the shame that I carried with me, was actually using my manners on random people and seeing how they would respond, and to see how they looked at me as just a woman who had good manners, not how I was looking at myself of you're just a dirty addict and you don't, why would they, can't, so practicing that really helped me get into a good place with my relationship with myself. I just think got to be kind to yourself, and it's be forgiving with yourself as much as you are forgiving with each other, It's like you want to love yourself to be able to take your own advice. How many people have you had in your life who what advice they would give you, and then they don't take their own advice? I think it's about loving yourself enough to take your own advice, And it's nice to kind of get there, like it's been a bit of hard work, a lot of hard work, but I wouldn't change anything. I got told by an elder that humility negates shame. So living in a humble state and showing humility either through kindness or manners has definitely been what's healed my spirit and what's makes me want to get up every day and be a better person. And I think if you show truth in your sequencing, like this is who I am and this is how I'm going to behave, and then all of a sudden you're 3 years deep with the truth in your sequencing of being the person that you say you're going to be, you got your validation, and it's a lot easier to put your head back up, start making eye contact with people and I'm here, what now, kind of thing.
Yeah, and you talked about choice, and I think we should build a society where communities are looking after each other, so we can work on the root of those things, which is comes back to childhood trauma and or other things, misbehavior or manners, missing manners, a lack of manners, a lack of love, or whatever it is, lack of sharing, lack of kindness. And so is this the reason why you went into first mental health and now doing peer work to have like an impact on society in this way?
I feel like culturally the Wiradjuri have always practiced peer-to-peer support. It was an integral part of our society, and obviously First Nation Australian have what's known as transgenerational trauma. So the trauma's past generational. You mob have got a bit of that too, from your history. So it was always a part of our culture, like when we say, there was no jails, there was no crime, of course there was some kind of crime, but when you come into a community and you're provided with everything, like if you had come to country and you're in my area, I'd be required to feed you and keep you safe and keep you well as a spiritual commitment, a cultural expectation. That was the norm. So people with transgenerational trauma often have like an intimidation of any formal systems, so the legal system, the mental health system. So I think that will be like integral for First Nation peer workers to be able to. What I liked about peer work is that you're completely there to support somebody. You're in no position of power or authority, which probably drew me more to peer work than the mental health support work. I think it was easy culturally just to work out like offering peer support was very easy, came easy, so that was nice. And I do think that that's a bit of cultural memory, cultural knowledge, like knowing that was a better way than leaving, I think it's a harsh society with our, like, when people make a mistake, like either they come down on them like a ton of bricks and it's an error, like I think sometimes society can be quite unforgiving, and I think as a peer support worker you're in a position to not so much show forgiveness, but show that, yeah, you made a mistake, but you matter anyway. Like no one's giving up on you. You're not, which is nice. And I think that was probably the biggest thing with my recovery was the more well I got, the more people that came to me, which kind of just perpetuates the healing and makes you want to keep walking forward, or start to put you in a position where I am, where I now have the ability to walk beside people. Peer support is great in the sense where it gives you the opportunity in a way to be kind of the person you needed in that situation. Of course, it's the individual, everyone's individual stories are different, but to be in a position where you can be who you needed is, like to see recovery facilitated like that is really rewarding.
I have one more question, and I think then we slowly come to an end. Yeah, but I was just wondering. You said you have a daughter, and how's the relationship to your daughter?
I have a son and a daughter. To the same, like they have the same dad. I was married for a bit. My daughter's 25. She lives in Melbourne. She's a disability support worker. Our relationship is a little bit strained, and that's all right. I'm willing to wait and go slow and carefully. And I have, my boy is 21 in March, and he is a horticulturalist. He lives on the coast as well, just on the border of New South Wales and Queensland. I'm still where for me, when I went missing in action because of my opiate addiction, she had some wonderful family members on her dad's side, and her dad step up for both of the kids while I was unwell. And unfortunately, there's been a big divide, like kind of a big wedge put in me getting a healthy relationship again. I've taken that where I want to be humble, which is kind of preventing me from presenting my side of the story, because I don't want to break relationships that supported those children whilst I was unwell. Now that I'm recovered, so I've chosen not to break the bonds, but because of that, it has impeded the healing process. I'm okay with it. It hurts, but I'm okay with that because I did enough damage to those children already that I don't want to inflict more trauma on them for my own gain, even though that gain would be a relationship with the two of them. It was a hard decision. And it's always harder, I guess, in a way of taking the higher road, if you could put it that way. But I've caused enough damage, and I still stand by my decision.
And you said earlier you can love from distance, and I think this fits really well. Yeah. I think I'm not sure if my question still fits, because I was wondering when you were talking about peer work, how do you engage people to talk with you, that they open up and that, they talk to you?
Exactly how you two have, being curious.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
So yeah, we really enjoy this conversation with you. It's been great, and it's also for us it's a very interesting topic because this is something we haven't touched on before. We have touched on addiction before, but not into the indigenous culture of Australia, and also in this scope like that you presented to us today, which is really interesting, very helpful. I hope everyone can listen and learn from that. And so we slowly come to a close, but we also have two more questions that we always ask our interview guests, and I don't know if you've listened to the other ones.
I was too nervous, but I want my newsletter, so I'm signing up. Yeah.
Nice, but you don't have to be nervous because those questions is your own interpretation. There's no right and wrong, and as we learned so far, our society should also learn to not judge anyone because of their mistakes. It's more like we were just interested in what your point of view are on those topics. So one of our questions is, imagine you would have a school full of kids, and you could choose the subjects, or you could choose what they should learn in life. What is of most importance? What do you think is of most importance for the world and for the society? So what subjects could it be, or what should they learn in this school, in your school?
Mindfulness, definitely. Yep. I think children are like little sponges, and even with trauma, they're so resilient. That just a little bit of mindfulness for children goes such a long way. And pretty much my mantra, though, love anyway, would be the main thing I'd want to tell them, and to the girls, nobody is going to write on your gravestone, she kept a clean house. Nobody,
Thank you. The second question is, because our podcast name is called Unpopular People. Imagine you would be popular. So in terms, everyone would know you all over the world, and you would stand on a big stage and everyone would listen to you. What would you do differently, and what advice would you give?
I would teach the world that the best form of celebrity is the ones that are kind, not the ones that are beautiful or rich.
Thank you very much. We're coming to an end now, unfortunately. I think we could continue for hours with this really interesting conversation with you. Thank you so much. If people would like to get in touch with you, do you like that as a first question, and how can they do that?
Maybe through you. Yep, I'm happy for my, contact details or email or whatever. That would be fine. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, we also have a community on our Discord server where people can sign up and they can exchange with each other. And we send you an invite, and you can be part of this as well. We would really like people to engage on the server as well, because it makes our community grow, and it also helps people to exchange with each other. It's a free platform without an algorithm. There is no advertisement popping up or anything, so people can go on there and talk to each other. There's manners is important in this one, it's based on respect as well, which is very nice. So there's good conversations should happen on this platform. So yeah, we will invite you as well, so you're part of the Unpopular People community now as well. Thank you very much for this, and again, it's been so many topics and there could be so much more. That's why we engage everyone who's listening, sign up for our newsletter, be part of the community. And I think if you have any more questions to Annie or also to us that we should pass on to Annie, then you can ask us there. Yeah, thank you very much again, and this is goodbye from our side. And if you have any final words, now is the time for it.
What an honor. Thank you so much, both of you. My spirit is really, really happy.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this inspiring interview with Annie.
We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. If you want to get in touch with us, or if you want to get in touch with Annie, please sign up for our newsletter and join our community on www.unpopularpeople.com.
Because listening and learning from each other is key for personal development and success.